Well, welcome to the Neufeld Institute's Q&A panel on parenting in a pandemic. The Neufeld Institute is about applying developmental science to raising children, parenting, and teaching them. It can be a challenge at the best of times, but these challenges can mount when we're in unfamiliar territory. I'm Gordon Neufeld, and here to help answer your questions are two of our Neufeld Institute faculty. Dr. Deborah McNamara is author of Rest, Play, Grow, Making Sense of Preschoolers, as well as a children's book, The Story Plane, and she's joining us from her home in Vancouver. And Tamara Strijack is our academic dean and the co-author of Reclaiming Our Students About Emotional Health in Schools, and she's joining us from her home in the Cowichan Valley on Vancouver Island. And so we're here to answer your questions. I'm curious as to what is in store for us tonight. I'll pass it back to you, Tamara, to throw the first one.
All right. Well, yes, we've had many questions come in, continue to come in to our email questions at Neufeld Institute. And I want to start with one that came up that was started off just an interesting observation that right now she's had some challenges with her two children. One is 10. I'm not sure the age of the other one. I think it may be about 8, and highly sensitive, challenges in school, and very hard to kind of very hard to bring to rest. So a lot of agitation, a lot of frustration that often moves to aggression while he's at school. And what she's finding, she says there's 8 weeks in and things are better. Things are starting to, she's able to bring her oldest child to rest in a way that she has only been able to do in the summer, just before she starts getting ready to have him go back to school. And so him being at home has been really helpful. And then she also reflected that her middle child is actually able to get to his tears, that there's a place where there's a softness that she sees in him that she hasn't seen before. And so it begs the question of seeing, okay, so here you're able to provide these conditions, that the situation has given them this time at home, and now we're looking at what happens when things go back. This has been another question that came in too, and I'll tie those in together. How do we hold on to some of those what feel like miracles, when we get the child to the place of rest, to the place of softness where they can feel what they need to feel? How do we hold on to that?
Well, I think first of all, the understanding here is very important. Children were designed for home, not school, and that's important to realize right from the start. School is a new invention. Relatively speaking, that is in society. The problem with school is that it involves separation. And separation is the most stressful of all, separation from those that we're attached to. And separation is the most stressful of all. And so because it's so typical and normal and it's all around us, we don't actually think that, oh my goodness, our child may not be able to handle it as well as we think we can. Everybody's doing it. It should be easy. But in fact, if the child is having difficulty holding on to you when apart, if they lose a sense of you, lose a sense of continuity or connection, then it can lead to frustration. It's a stressful experience for them, and so aggression can result. The take-home lesson from this, if there's a take-home lesson for this, is what I would say is if it's getting better when your child is home from school, if it's really getting better and some of the symptoms of frustration are decreasing, the child is not as alarmed, not as frustrated, they're more at rest, their heart is a bit softer, they're not as defended, then it's really telling you that the child needs help holding on to you when apart. And so when they go back to school, the challenge will be not to take it simply for granted now because they have a relationship with you that serves them the whole day. There are things that you'll be able to, just thinking of ways that you can bridge the separation, put the focus on the connection, give a sense of continuity, give them something of yours to open up when they come to school. There's so many ways we can do this to really help walk the day through, to give them a sense of us when apart from us. And so it's there's many kids like this that are actually, where it feels right. My youngest grandson, he hasn't even asked about when we're going back. This is the way it should be. This is exactly the way it should be, and he's just loving it. And so, but it does say it does remind us in the sense that part of our job is because school involves separation. Even if they love school, it still involves separation. And so it doesn't mean if they like it or not like it, even if they love it, involves separation. It's thinking, how can I help my child provide or have more of a sense of connection with me even when apart? And you'll find that will help reduce the amount of frustration that they're experiencing.
Mhm. Yeah, it certainly is eye-opening. Excuse me, when you have that window into what rest looks like for your child, and the alarm is down and the separation is down, and it just gives you such an interesting perspective on your child, and how when the conditions are conducive, natural development just takes over, play takes over, there's a less agitation, the emotional system seems to come to more rest. It's very hard sometimes just to even describe what rest is, because it's a state of being. It's not something you can force someone to be at. Go rest, go rest. That doesn't quite do the job. So when you reduce the stimulation, when you restore connection, when there's room and space to play, and then you get this beautiful window into the potential of what human development can look like, it's breathtaking. It's breathtaking, and you don't forget it. And it's like a miracle, and you don't want to lose it. And I hear that longing in this mom. She's been able to see this window into, this is possible. This was buried under all of this separation and all of this work. And here my son is growing and thriving. And so I hope more than anything that parents get to see that and witness that miracle of development when the conditions are conducive in the middle of a pandemic. The irony is stunning.
Well, this is, and I'd like to underscore that is from a developmental point of view, as Deborah has mentioned, all good things come from a place of rest. And you can, school is usually about work. Everything about school is work, outcomes, schoolwork, homework, everything about school is this way. And although it is meant to serve to shoehorn into society, that is the role of school. The thing is this is not how development occurs. Development occurs in the external womb of attachment, where there is rest from having to make that work. And then it happens spontaneously with wonderful fruit, wonderful results. We wonder why we are pushing so hard when it just happens spontaneously if the conditions are conducive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, I want to just, on that note, bring one more thing in here. And that's when we are in that position then where the child is agitated, when there is some alarm, when they are in work mode, it's even more important that we find ways to compensate. So when they do go back, how do we find extra room for all the emotion that's stirred up in them during the day? How do we find room? Do we need to do something active after school? Do we need a special time of connection after school? Do we need a time of throwing darts after school? I don't know. Something.
Sounds good to me.
Maybe as parents we need that. But finding something, because it's remembering okay, so they're in this place. I remember my daughter really struggled when she was 5. It was just too long to be away from home. And so she held everything together, and then she got home and she just lose it. She just
Mhm.
melt down, and it would be like, wow, over any little thing. It would feel like this big tantrum. And I thought, oh, okay, I got to find another way. If I'm
Isn't
going
that what most of us do after work?
to,
I feel one coming on right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty normal.
yeah. So finding some other outlets, and we've talked about that in some of our other Q&As, is we need those, and we need those especially now. And as we go back into whatever this new normal is, and there's all these restrictions and there's all these added frustrations,
Mhm.
things we can't do anymore that we used to take for granted, huge frustrations, huge alarm for children. How do we find those? How do we build those into our routine? Yeah.
Well, that's the key. That's the key. If you can, a ritual of connection after a time of separation is always good. Recollect your child, get their eyes, smiles, and nods. Make it easy, engage in some playful activity with a playful attitude. Make it easy. That's a form of rest, but that allows the feelings to catch up. And we all need our feelings to catch up with us, because after that time, if that's possible. If not, because you have to go to work and you go back to things where the child comes home and there's not somebody there to provide the sense of connection for them, or whatever it is, then making rituals would start off not with doing homework right away, but it's something that is playful for the child, is not outcome based, is playful, creative, a craft maybe, jigsaw puzzle. It's something that engages them just for a bit, and that also helps land them. Play is a form. Deborah mentioned how much rest is absolutely essential for everything that's good, all development, and play is actually a form of activated rest. So if we can create a ritual that way, we can help preserve the emotional health of our children, even as they go back to probably a more stressful situation, trying to get used to a whole new set of protocols and not really understanding it, especially the young ones. How do you figure this out? I have to stand where? I mean, it's hard at the best of times to be able to do this. And how come I can't talk to my friends? And how come I can't hug my teacher? And how come she's like that? And so on. And I can imagine it's there's going to be some very confused children out there, as we try to figure out, and how long does this last? Like, oh my goodness, okay, for a day or two, but how long is it going to last? So, but the important thing is we can take a fair amount of stress as humans. That's amazing that we can do so, but we need time for our feelings to catch up with us, and that's where the children really need that. If they do have that time, either in play or a time of connection, they'll be okay.
Yeah.
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 I was thinking about the role of, the structure and the rituals and the little islands of connection that you put into your day. How much food plays a significant role of that, because it's always something that brings you together.
Yeah.
And I once had a mother who came into my office and she said, "I did that snack platter thing you told me to do." I'm like, "I told someone to make a snack platter?" Anyway, she had interpreted this connection ritual to gather her children with food with a snack platter every time they came home from school. She was fortunate enough to be there when they got home from school. And even 10 years later, after she'd been doing it, they were still doing it. And her 14-year-old and 12-year-old boy or whatever it was would come in, and they'd sit, and she'd have all their favorite foods, and they would sit and they would just automatically download their day, and talk and talk and talk. And I think about how many times we lament that our children don't share with us, but
Mhm.
you put food in front of them, they'll come to your side because they want the food. Especially teenagers, you're totally exploiting their
Yeah,
vulnerability and their
you
growing
are.
by putting food in front of them. It's wonderful.
It
And
works for
then
me.
yeah, and as soon as you're eating, you're in a dependent position, right? And
Yeah.
you're enjoying it. And then what comes next is you feel more at rest. And then of course, when you feel at rest, the emotions start to come out. And this mother has such a window in her children's lives, and it didn't come from chasing them around or telling them, you know, you got to talk to me, and okay, this is our togetherness time, make it, you know. It was just simply moving in with a connection ritual and just making herself available, and sliding in there sideways through an act of caretaking that her sons relished in, especially as they got to be big boys and needed all that food.
Yeah.
Deborah's next book is actually on food and attachment, and I can hardly wait, Deborah.
I can't either.
Just hearing all of these things from you, I can hardly wait. I just think it's going to
Uh,
be one of the most significant contributions
well, I appreciate
to attachment, understanding the relationship with attachment and food.
Yeah.
I hope so. It's exciting to be able to apply an attachment developmental model to this whole area, and just the keys in understanding these pieces. The keys just, you know, it opens up the field. So it's so important, this your work on attachment and development.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to take us a little bit different scenario, the other side of this, where it's a more difficult situation right now at home. As the mother describes, it's like living in a pressure cooker. Single mom, 9-year-old boy who's very restless by the sounds of it. She's trying to work full-time from home and parent full-time from home, and starting a program at school, and not feeling like there's any space, any luxury of anything, and you know, the pressures that are on, like you say, a pressure cooker. And the son, understandably, is starting to act out, wanting your attention, and you can feel a little bit helpless in this scenario. And this is a much different kind of situation where you don't have the help now that you may have had before, that you don't have those resources in place to support. And so looking for any suggestions or help in that regard.
Well, a few thoughts come to mind on that. It's always difficult when the demands increase, because often we find ourselves in the position of the breaks. We get exhausted and so on. And so it's really important that our yays are yays and our yays are yes and our nays are no, in the sense that when we provide attention, we engage, we provide the connection, we give a sense of being cared for. There's a lot of generosity coming from us. Even if we're tired and exhausted, that when we do it, we need to give the sense that the provision is greater than the need. And so, because otherwise it never satiates. When it never satiates, the child becomes more demanding. We become more exhausted. We become more resistant and passive. They become more demanding. Now we only attend to when the squeaky wheel is, and pretty soon it can really, really build up. And so when we're used to having a certain amount of space that has regulated things, when we're living on top of each other, there's the problem is that we kind of have to figure out how to be able to give a very clear signal when we're there. And also very clear signal is when we're inaccessible in some way. The other thing, and I mean, there's so much to walk around this particular thing, I'll just add one more and then pass it on, is when we're used to a certain amount of our own space, we can find it, suddenly we're thrown on top of each other. Then we're left trying to orchestrate the chaos. And that's never good at the best of times. The way culture works is very slowly. We're not meant for this sudden mess and change. Society was meant to evolve very slowly so that we could borrow a lot from our ancestors and then add a few things ourselves. Well, now we don't have anything left to borrow from our ancestors. We're really on our own. And we haven't developed the culture of parenting. We haven't developed the rituals, the kinds of things where children have their own alone time, where they have this craft going, and now they're on their little wooden lathe, and now this is the time for that. that, and they don't have this. And so now the parent is meant to be the constant companion, the constant this, to be on top of it all the time. And that the fact is nobody was ever meant to do this. Like, this isn't doable. Is that you have to slowly kind of wrestle your life into beginning to create some rituals and structures that allow individuals the space, engage them in some activity, playful activity, but gives you the breathing room you need. Because the moment you say, I need some alone time, or you act as if they're too much to handle, or you can't take the weight, the moment they see a sense of passivity or breaks on, a child goes crazy. All they can think of is pursuit. All they need is more. And they're on you and on you and on you until you feel like you're going to go crazy. And, you start looking for the rubber mallet, and you're not supposed to use that. So, yes, it is difficult, but we weren't meant to do this. We were made for a much slower paced society in which we brought in a lot of structure, and then we just had to do a few things around the edges. And now it's have to do everything. But the way through is to gradually create more and more structure in there, and in our interface to be as generous as we can muster. Just as much generosity as there, because otherwise it begins to be a demand, and then we lose our any kind of generosity and liking when we feel put upon that way.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that to highlight that generosity is important. It's just the sense that I get in the question is that this is a single mom. Um, Her resources have changed in terms of having the village to support her. She had her goals and her agenda. She's got work. She's got school. She's got a lot on her plate. These are her goals, and life has handed her a whole set of different conditions to have to deal with. And I just think about how much of parenting we face so much futility. I had no idea as a parent how much futility I would face. I had no idea that I would have expectations that would have to change, alter, be rethought in a heartbeat. Why? Because human beings are the most unpredictable, impulsive, emotional creatures that you are constantly having to adapt and think through, particularly when they're younger. And so, it sounds like this parent, when I hear her story, I see futility. I see lots of futility. She's lost her village. She's got huge expectations on her shoulders, and she's got a child who's incredibly uh, in need of her. And so, how do you put all those pieces together? Where are the pieces that you have to find your tears about? Where are the things that you can change? Where are the things that you can't change? But this would be a conversation around futility, and a hard conversation here around it, because otherwise I hear a boy that is in pursuit, as you say, Gordon, and parenting can get really reactive then, and you're chasing symptoms, you're chasing problems, and you end up being more in a behavioral, you know, um, hamster wheel where you're just chasing behavior, and behavior is getting bigger and bigger, and the relationship gets pushed to the side when it's the relationship that needs to be
Mm-hmm.
preserved. But
Yes.
the behaviors are getting bigger, and it's hard to get out from underneath that. And so it's kind of, I don't know if it's a reset or it's just looking at the futility of it, what can change, what cannot be changed, and
Mm-hmm.
working with your new parameters and the new realities as a single parent, and finding your tears about that. I've had many tears as a parent of
Yes.
jobs I've had to give up, or um, you know jobs I had to persevere with, for the sake of making things work. So this is hard. I hope you have someone. I hope this parent has someone in their life that they can
Mm-hmm.
talk things through, and that can listen to you and hear how you feel about these things, so that you can bounce some things off of another adult to try to make sense of this.
Yeah, and someone else just typed into the chat here, just saying, you just described my week.
Mm-hmm.
The more, what she said, the more I tried to withdraw, to rest and recharge my batteries, the more the kids have been grabbing
Mhm.
onto me. So I get it, but how can I get my rest
Mm.
so I can be generous? And just, I think what you spoke to there, Deborah, that idea of it's the futility, and also the finding those places where you could just say, today's been really hard. Somewhere where you can, not with your kids, but somewhere, someone you can call,
Mhm.
someone you can, or whether you can write it in a journal, just get some of that out. And I found when I went through a time like this where my kids, one in particular, was just in particular need of me, I found it took everything in me, because I was already so exhausted and so depleted. I actually didn't think I had any more to give. But when I could get ahead of it, like Gordon was talking about at the beginning there, when you get ahead, you get there first. And I was really intentional about, having a special. In this case, it was like a special coffee time. They didn't drink the coffee; they had hot chocolate, but they like to call it coffee time. And having this special time that I just, had to get up a little bit earlier, had to carve out a little bit of space. But even that little bit of space, it felt like our special time.
Mm.
And at night I had to do it where one went to bed early and the other one got to stay up and play a little game with me. And it was just 10 minutes, but it just gave them that special feeling of, I wanted to be with them. I wanted that they mattered, that this time mattered, that even though there was a lot going on and I wasn't available a lot of the time, when I could get there first, and I could create some kind of little ritual, little something to look forward to, I could fill them up, so to speak, and fill up that hunger. It would relieve them for a little bit from pursuing me.
I think it's important to realize that we 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 are rather remarkable as human beings in our ability to adapt, but it does require process. And what stands in the way of our adaptation is actually getting stuck in doing the same things over and over again that don't work. And as humans, we have a really hard time letting go of things. Even though we know they're futile, we have a hard time letting go. And it's because this process of adaptation is not actually logical, it's not actually rational, it's emotional. And so it does really, really mean that we do need to find our sadness from time to time about the things, all the things that we can't make everything work, where this isn't working, that isn't working. And because our that is the only way we can really let go. And if we let go, usually we can come up with something to try to keep on walking through that maze. But it's the inability to let go, because we can't, it's just not a matter of telling ourselves to do that. We do have to have our feelings about it. And we have to feel the futility around it. And that's where our sadness is important. So it is an emotional process. And if there is a friend, as Deborah, I think you mentioned, and Tamara as well, if there is somebody that you can have your rants with, and stay with your rants until you can feel some of the underside, a little bit of the sadness, that does help us let go of doing the same things over and over again that aren't really getting us anywhere.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that that question reminded me of, a week where your kids are in full pursuit of you, and the only question in your mind is how do I get rest so I can be generous again? I remember I was in my kids' school and I was having one of those days, just a really bad day of just too many demands, not enough attention, and trying to, just the stress that comes from that. And I remember I was walking to get my kids and I hadn't got them yet, and the PE teacher, the phys ed teacher, I saw him in the hallway, and he was a friend that I had did a lot of yard duty with. And he said, "Oh, hey, how you doing?" I said, "Oh gosh, I'm just drained. I'm so exhausted, and I just had a hard day, and I got to pick up the kids, and feed them. Geez, they always want to eat." And I was kind of joking, and just said, "Oh, it's going to be a full on, the day is not over kind of thing." And I remember the PE teacher, he looked at me and he said, "Yeah, I hate when those kids get in the way of work." And I just thought, I've just been schooled by the PE teacher and I do this for a
Mm,
living.
that's
And
right.
it struck my heart. And I'm just like,
Mm,
You know, and it reminds me of what you say, Gordon, you know, and I've been keeping this in my mind a lot. It's that we've got to protect the important from the urgent. And I was thinking that it was my children that were draining me, but actually it was it's everybody else. It's
Mhm.
my work. It's my kids actually, when I'm on as a parent and I'm taking care of them, I find rest in that. Yes, they are work in the sense that it requires
Mhm.
sacrifice and energy this way, but it's actually the rest of the world that gets in the way of that. And so I think when I have those conversations, and I don't know if it's the same for this parent, I'm not implying that it would be, but when I have that conversation with myself about how can I just get enough rest to be so generous with my kids, oftentimes the question for me is how am I letting other people take my generosity when it really
Mhm.
belongs to
Mhm.
my children? And what do I need to do? Who do I need to say no to? How do I need to, you know, why do I take on these things when I shouldn't take them on? Why have I done this to myself? Why don't I have more no's in me? And I have a hard conversation with myself around futility. Deb, it's not possible. You
Yes.
want to do everything and you can't. It's wonderful that you love to do all this stuff,
Yes.
but the season of your life is you must be for your children now, and that's hard, you know. But it's also that is my place of rest when I don't wrestle with that as well. So I don't know if that helps make some sense, but for me, my children usually aren't the drain so much as the place that I can be restored.
Yeah. Hi. Thank you, Deborah. Yeah, I can relate to that. I just have another comment coming in from the person who asked the question, and um, just that feeling of that it's hard not to take it personally, and it's hard not to take and then our own reactions get in the way, and we end up getting angry and frustrated and things come out. And that's the hard part, is how do we get to that place where we're not taking it personally? This is not yeah, this is not about this is just, there's too much in there, and it's got to come out somewhere, and you're the only one there right now. And that's what's so hard, is you're going to get all of it, all the foul stuff, all the crap, it's all going to come out.
Mhm.
And
Because they asked you to for some help, because they asked you for the simplest of things, and they were just, yeah, here's
yeah,
a small little irritant.
yeah. So finding those places, and I know it sounds hard, I know it's, but finding somewhere where you can um, try to find somewhere for your reactions. The reactions are there in you, but
Yes. Yes.
can you
Yes.
hold on to them enough to get to the bathroom or the laundry room or
And
somewhere? That was my trick, in the laundry room.
and a bit of sadness will go a long way to keeping your heart soft,
Yeah,
so that your eyes stay soft. And the biggest thing, even if you know you shouldn't take it personally, it's really difficult to get over ourselves. And like, you know, it's
yeah,
it's we have difficulty growing up to where it's not about us. And childhood is all about us, and then here we're supposed to get beyond ourselves and be the answer to our children. The key, of course, is our eyes. If we see them in need of us and we find our generosity or us as the answer, generally we'll find it in us. But how do we keep from taking things personally? I don't know if we can, but at least even when, as soon as we realize it, being able to realize what we've done and take up a relationship with it, and and uh, and uh, and being able to see if we can see beyond that to the need from where that was coming from, and how we can answer the need, and not just the noise or the symptom or the demand, but how we can actually answer the need in the child.
yeah,
Mhm. I find too, just a good cry every day helps. That's my
If
that's
there
my
was one
mandate for
answer.
myself. I'm like, okay, these days my goal is
Yeah.
to find a good cry. I just need to find. The other day it was an Irish dance video.
uh,
It just need to find something that's just gonna draw the tears out, and I am just 100% a better person to be around, because it's just an incredible discharge. It's an incredible softening, and even if I have no idea what the tears are about, which I often don't these days,
yes.
it's just it just brings such rest, so that this sense of frustrated futility, that you're constantly up, that you can't always you know, up against you can't always name. I just think, Deb, if you just cried every day, that is the prescription that you need. Write it right now. Write
There's
yourself a
got to be some
prescription.
kind of saying about that, like a cry a day keeps whatever it is, keeps
Keeps
you
the
in the
asshole
game, or
away.
keeps you, you know,
Oh, internal one. Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, me, I don't become full of foul
There's another
frustration.
book
Yeah.
in that, Deborah. Another
No,
book. I can see the one
well,
coming after
yeah, I'm too frustrated to write.
the.
Well, and
I
I
have to
think
cry through it.
that answers the question. There's another question that just came in right now to the chat about that. How do we self-care? And I think that's the question, is how do we make some space for those things, for the tears in us, for the frustration in us? How do we make that space so that it's not coming out on our children? It's so hard, but yet it's so necessary. And I know when I get that edge in me, I know, okay, I got to watch another one of those, you know, the Grey's Anatomy or This Is Us or something that just tugs at those, you know, it just gets me sideways because I don't expect it. And yet I do expect it, and I know I need it. But I find myself just sobbing, and I go, okay, all right, I feel a little bit lighter. I can face tomorrow, because I don't even know what I'm crying about anymore. I'm crying about all the things that I have no control over, and all the alarm that I can't even voice right now. And it just, I think that's the biggest place we can go to take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our children. You know, that's, yeah.
Well, we all need time for our feelings to catch up with us. That is the bottom line in emotional health and well-being, is we need time. In stress, our brain our brain tries to inhibit these feelings, to keep them out. Actually, the feelings are simply feedback to the brain, and when the brain is busy working and trying to solve problems, it isn't very much open to the feedback that we experience as feelings. And the most important thing when we're doing a marathon is as we're doing now, because of the uncertainty, you know, we all long for knowing. A question comes up over and over again, well, what's the new normal? Like, we want to know what we have to work with, right? And when we're dealing with this and having to solve one problem after another, and as soon as we've done this, another one pops up, and all of these things we thought we'd taken care of, and that now they're kind of falling apart, is that giving time for feelings to catch up. And it's and often we need to, like, a space to, our emotions often come to us with a lot of force and a pressure, so we need room to rant, but we need to find it in a way that doesn't sacrifice our role as being the answer to our children. And in the wake of the rant is often the sadness that we need to have to make sure that we stay soft and adaptive, and we can do the things we need. But ideally, it's in a relationship, a friend. It is, the relationship can be the relationship with one's God. To experience that, it can be in that relationship. That's ideally, it's in the context of relationship. And if it's not there, that is what emotional playgrounds are meant for. That's why the Greeks talked about them, 2,000 years ago or 2,500 years ago, is they saw play as for adults, not for kids. And it's very interesting. We need to get back to understanding that we need to make those times for us when our feelings catch up, whatever it is. If it's painting, if it's writing, if it's writing a poetry, if it's a song, if it's music, is what it is for me, and so on. But we need to find that time, and if our feelings catch up with us, our own emotional health is taken care of. And I don't mean that the feelings have to be nice feelings. We just have to feel what it is, and then we can go and make room for our children's feelings to catch up with them and to be the answer for them. But that's the most important thing. We can't control our world. We can't control the circumstances. And but again, as humans, we're remarkable in terms of what we can actually do. But that is the one most important thing, is creating time for our feelings to catch up with us. That will keep us emotionally healthy.
You know, it's funny, as you're,
Go ahead, Deborah.
are you sure?
Mm-hmm.
I was just thinking as you're talking, Gordon, what is it that moves me in those things when I can find the door open a little bit, you know? Because usually I'm in my head quite a bit and always thinking and planning and all the rest of it. And I was thinking, you know, that it's out of all the things that move me, it's usually bearing witness to some act of kindness or caring that's unexpected, unrewarded. You know, it's just out of the blue where I see the goodness in human beings and I see caring. And I was thinking about, you know, out of all the emotions that we have as humans, caring seems to have such a special doorway that,
Mm,
you know, it's out of everything that disappears, you know, it's the one last one that's
mm,
kind of wired in there because attachment is just sitting on top
yeah.
of it. And I was thinking, you know, just wondering if it's that caring that's able to get through. And it is, there's been so many beautiful acts of caring and generosity. And holy cow, I cannot hold it back when I witness the beauty
Mm,
of humans showing up and taking care of each other today. You know, and my heart just opens up and it feels full and the tears come. But I think there's something special about that emotion, for me anyway. I don't know if it's more universal, but it would stand, I think, to be a little bit more, you know, I could see it being a little bit more shared because of its importance to attachment and being so critical for human functioning.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I agree, Deborah. That gets me too. I'll just, and that's really what will end up getting me in the end. Yeah, I wanted to bring in just another comment here from someone that was saying they're trying to get to the sad. They've tried everything. They're trying to get to the sadness, and finding that just it's only frustration there. And I think sometimes we can uh, we actually need to make some room for some of that
Oh, yeah. Go with the
frustration to come out
frustration.
first before we
Absolutely.
can get to the tears.
Oh
And
my goodness. Yeah.
yeah, a good scream. I mean, I just remember one time where I just had, you know, I just needed to scream. I needed to, I was in my car. I went into my car so nobody could hear me, but I just needed to get it out because I was so far from my tears, but in the act of getting some of it out and then later being able to write some of that out, then the tears came. Then I was able to access, because it's like you were saying, how it's sitting underneath the attachment, the caring feelings. It's like, for me, that frustration, underneath that frustration is the sadness, the disappointment, all of those things I can't go at directly because it's too much, it's too vulnerable, and there's too much frustration that needs to move first.
You must be a little bit like me, Tamara. I don't know. I usually have to scream before I get to the underside of that scream too, before
Oh
before
yeah,
the tears come. You know, the
yeah.
frustration is there. I can remember, you know, when I used to I play out my emotions on the piano, and that was at primary. I was classically trained, and then it turned to I had to use it as an instrument, as an emotional playground, and I was so thankful for that. But I remember so much of the time it would be there would be some good pounding on the piano before the soft side would come, you know, before it would shift to a gentler tone, and then finally to the minors, and finally to, you know, to something that was not full of just discord and harmony, but I mean, but something that was much more tender and much more sad. But everyone is so different. Everyone is so different in this, and the issue is you can't make it happen. It's more like making a date for it and not putting the focus on. The worst thing to do is to put a focus on. Like I gotta have a cry. It's not going to work. It is just making time where it's okay for your feelings to catch up with you, and just making that time and allowing it to happen when it comes. Music is a good sweeper this way. If you actually if you let it, it will find the emotion that needs to be met in you. If you let it, if you can make your music, that's better. But if you've got a lot of music you can listen to, just let it drift to where it needs to. But again, everyone is different in this.
I want to bring, that's a good segue, because one of the themes that's been coming up is some questions around teens and challenges with teens. And I feel like music is just so key at this time. All of the things we've been talking about are true also
Mhm.
for our teens. They need those places. We need to find those kinds of places where they can access, get their feelings back a little bit. And so music can be just an incredible place in adolescence where, um, you'll see, what they're drawn to is often where they're at, where the energy level is at. And it can really provide some of that release, whether they are listening and engaged in it, or whether they're actually actively doing it and playing. And my daughter started playing cello when she was 16 because she played the guitar before that. So it wasn't, too hard to transition. But she just wanted that melancholy. She wanted that,
Cello does it for me.
so much in her,
Mhm.
right, that wanted to get it out.
Mm,
And she struggled. And there was one of the questions was, what about those who are really struggling already with depression, with not having access to those feelings, with being holding on, and now we have this extra challenges of how do we invite that out? How do we provide those kinds of spaces? How do we make it easy to find their tears? That was one of the questions. How do we help them find their tears when they're fighting it? It was easier as children. And this is where, again, all of these things we've been talking about apply here. We just can't go at it directly. It's
no,
just,
no, and you can't force it.
no.
You can't force it. And by the time a child is an adolescent, they play a role in their own development. It's called the organismic factor from a development point of view. And there is there's no guarantee that you can make what it is that you need to happen. Our role is to make it as easy as possible, not to get in that way, and to do what we can to provide the conditions that would be conducive. When somebody is running away from their feelings, of course, we intuitively know that's where they need to go to. When somebody is running away from their grief, we can see it obviously when they have a loss, they're running away from it, or they're running into drink or whatever it is. It's not as if there is something you can do to stop the running away. All you can do is as parents find your own sadness around this. As a grandparent, find your own sadness. As a teacher, when you see this happening, and so that there, I've often thought there's some kind of law in the universe about the conservation of sadness, is that the person who's trying to help the other who has lost their tears needs to almost have as much tears in their life to be able to compensate for that, And so we need to find our way to stay soft, and so our invitation is there, and then just no, it's just so important not to get alienated by the symptoms, not to let the symptoms, because when somebody loses softness in them, the language turns hard, everything turns hard, they're more alienating. And that's where it really requires soft and caring eyes, with insight to be able to not react, and to keep from burning the bridge, because the relationship is the context for being able to help, and that's where it's difficult to hold on and hope for a better day. And that's a good thing about relationship, it lasts for a long time. And at the bottom line is, when we don't know what to do, we need to retreat to that relationship and just find a way of holding on. Just holding on. It's sometimes I've said to parents over and over again, you're frustrated with not being able to make headway, but oh my goodness, you're doing a good job of holding on, because if you let go, this kid would be in free fall. You would see all kinds of other things, happen in there. It can get a lot worse. And so holding on and hoping for a better day, I, when there is a more obvious grief, something that catches them by surprise, when the heart softens a little bit, the relationship warms up, and uh, for the most part, life rewards that patience. It can't be guaranteed, but for the most part, life does reward that patience.
And yeah, that's beautifully said. And by holding on, you change who you are as well as a parent. I mean, you
Yeah.
grow in your generosity and you keep your heart soft. If you turn your heart against your child, you will also be lost at some part inside of you. I don't think that you can have a soft heart if you've turned part of that away or off. And so holding on will surely grow you. It will surely change you, and it is the answer for not only your child but for you, because this relationship is significant to you, and that separation is incredibly painful as a parent. So you've got to keep your heart soft in any way you can, and to hold on and to have faith. And I've seen relationships you never thought would ever mend, that were so far apart, but just by holding on, it's just incredible. It's incredible how children can reorient to parents and come home. But if you don't maintain a home base, if you don't maintain that invitation, they can't return home to you. So have faith and keep holding on, and trying to keep your heart soft to that child, and look for receptivity. They're lost and they need you. They might not know how to find you, but if you hold on, they surely will be able to.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a beautiful answer. There was another related question, and I think that answer is applies here. The question about a 17-year-old boy who's detached and very resistant to relationship, and it was like that before the pandemic, and now they're together in the same space, but there's no relationship there, or no invitation for relationship there. And that's, I would just echo what both of you just said, as that answer to that question is holding on. Holding on, finding that relationship, looking for any little window, any little place where there can be, not pushing it though, not going too far in, because then they're just gonna retreat even further, but coming along sideways, finding something you can share in common, going for a drive, doing something where it's not threatening. It's a show maybe you watch together. Maybe it's just sitting side by side on a couch watching a show together. It's huge. Even that can help soften, and I don't know, but not giving up.
But you have to let your heart ache too.
Yeah.
We're meant to ache, and sometimes that's all there is to do is have that ache. At least if we can feel it, we don't lose our own feelings, and so on. And so if we can ache, we can usually find our love as well, and find a way of being able to extend the invitation to exist, even though it's not being received at that time.
Well, I want to end on I'm just going to shift it slightly. I want to end on one note that we didn't have time for last week. And this was just more of a tricky situation between two teens, two boys and brothers, and the oldest one has some health issues, some compromised immune system, and so is not actually going to be able to go back to school when the time comes. They're actually, both boys, the brothers, are getting along quite well at home. They're playing, they're finding their outlets. It's quite beautiful, but the mother's quite concerned that once they go back, the younger brother is very much looking forward to going back to school and that connection. But he's not going to be able to go because of his older brother. And so really thinking ahead, going, oh my goodness, I don't want there to be resentment. It's not going to feel fair. And so many of things in situations that we're in right now, they're not fair. They don't feel fair. It's really challenging. And so anyway, I know we only have a few minutes, but just a few thoughts maybe.
The most important thing is not to fight the feelings of frustration and unfairness. These are natural. You have already predicted them. You can say, but always put it as part of you. I'm sure part of you will feel this, part of you will be there, and there'll be another part in which there's love for his brother and caring for his brother. And that is a huge growing up experience when we can't get it all, when we're in the middle of our feelings. And that feeling conflicted is what puts him at the steering wheel. So rather than try to weigh it on one side, to try and argue, make room for all of it, but always represent it as part of you, not all of you, but part of you. Make room for the other feelings. And he's got some work to do with those feelings. You can't do that work for him, but you can prepare the way, and so that he can feel the ambivalence that is there. When we're invested in an outcome, we often argue to our own feelings, and we argue to another's feelings, and that's a mistake. Is to invite them all, and when they all are there, there's some inherent conflict in it. This is all part of natural development, but then we're not having to push away certain feelings so that we so to try and solve the problem that way, because that's never a good way. That always has boomerangs on us.
Mhm. The only thing I would just add to that is just it's a time to lead. It's a time to lead into the emotional storm. And I think sometimes when we see the storm coming out with our kids, we're like, okay, how do we solve this?
Mm,
Because the only answer is really that we got to go into it and we got to lead.
yeah.
And part of that is just to accept the heaviness of that and what that will mean for you. And okay, I do have to do this. It can feel lonely. It can feel you can have some doubts about what you're doing. That's all fair, but lead, you must take the lead. This is my decision. I have to bear responsibility for it, and wherever my kids are going to be at, I'll hold on to that. I'll make room for it, all the different parts of it. But this is my decision, and I will take the steering wheel on it and take what comes. And I think when you take that, there's a futility that settles inside of you, like, okay, we're going to do this. And you rise. You rise because you've owned that decision and the responsibility for it, and you'll find your way through. Half the times I think we're just battling, oh, please don't make me have to do this.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah. We do wish for things to be a lot easier,
Yeah.
understandably.
Someone else take the wheel. You're
Yeah.
like, yeah,
Someone
no
else
one
do
else.
this. I don't want to be grown up yet.
No, I
Yeah.
want to run.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. Our time is here at the end, and
Thanks for all your questions.
Mhm.
yes, thank you for the questions, participation in the chat as well. Lots of great comments and questions